Welcome into our lives.
And welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
We're so happy to have you.
Join us as we embark on a journey of deep exploration, soul searching, and asking the hard questions.
With the goal of truly understanding the most aligned, empowered, and purposeful versions of ourselves.
We want to live an extraordinary life, and we're willing to dig deep to find out what it takes.
Buckle up. You're about to meet a new version of yourself, an extraordinary one. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Today is the day I'm recording this, is November 19th, and I am just hyped up. It is a big day for anyone who follows astrology. Pluto, which has been in Capricorn for the last 15 years and caused a bit of a ruckus, or some would say has caused a bit of a ruckus for some of us, has moved into its new sign today. And that sign is Aquarius. And, you know, it feels like things are about to get a little bit easier. I literally have felt the energy shift. I also did my first jujitsu, or I guess it was more of a mixed martial arts class this morning. If you read my Substack, you will understand what led to that. Kind of this need to feel safe in our current world and protect myself against anyone. And my husband decided to join me, which is extra fun. And so we're in this hour-long mixed martial arts class this morning, and we're partnered against each other. And he is, I don't know, like 240 pounds, maybe even more than that. I'm not sure. And I'm 115 pounds. And it was just, we had so much fun. Like we were laughing most of the time, which seemed to be frowned upon a bit, but like we couldn't help ourselves. And it was wild. I said to this, even though this may sound ridiculous, told him after class, you know, we've been together for 15 years. I was like, oh, that's the first time I really realized how much bigger and more powerful you are than me. And like how much that really, if you don't have skills, which is why I'm going to these classes, but if you don't have self-defense skills, how much just the weight and size really does make a difference. But you guys, I learned some pretty badass moves in this class, and I had my husband scared a few times. He was like, oh, okay. I could see, you know, one of them was like some kind of rear chokehold, and like, forget therapy. Putting your husband in a chokehold is all you need. It was like for sure better than couples therapy. You know, I got to throw some punches toward him, some kicks. We got to laugh a lot. It was a lot of fun, but it has me, that along with the shift in energy, and it was the perfect way to kind of start this move from Capricorn into Aquarius energy that is happening. But it's got me buzzing. So for any of you who, whether you do or don't, like it takes a lot of times to hear this. So I'm going to share, and I should remind you all that I'm not an astrologer. I dabble and have fun, and I actually am doing some studying with our friend Eric from the Unlock Method. He is my favorite. He is my go-to astrologer. If you want updates or readings or want to, you know about your birth chart, check him out at the Unlock Method on Instagram. And we have a few different episodes that he's been in. So all that to say, I'm not an astrologer, but here is kind of my understanding of what is happening. So Pluto has been in Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. And that really caused some chaos in, you know, the breakdown of financial structures. You know, 2008 was the financial crisis. The decline of trust in government, corporations, religions, challenges to some of the patriarchal structure. You know, some of these things feel like they're kind of good, but it did cause a lot of chaos. Pluto is the planet of, you know, death, transformation, kind of the underworld. So a lot of it probably felt really heavy, hard, devastating. Personally, it may have forced you to confront a lot of your personal limitations or stories or, power dynamics, things that were have been holding you back. And while that's a good thing, kind of the facing of them and God, navigating through all of that is really hard. And you can tell I'm speaking from experience. And I know if you've been a listener, you know that is the case. So it's been a little sticky, a little rough, a little bit like kind of for a lot of us, like pushing a boulder up a hill, right? And the energy of Pluto moving into Aquarius feels a lot more in flow. It feels like we are starting to question, and I've seen and felt this in a lot of my readings and from a lot of you. We're starting to wake up and ask questions about our own values, like what we actually want out of life, what's the meaning of life. We're starting to kind of put that as a priority, as like, what is my actual purpose? What is my soul desire? How do I actually want to be living life? Versus tied to maybe, just the everyday work, sleep, eat, repeat, try and gain financial abundance. Like we're thinking about abundance in a different way. We're going to start to see people want to be in community a bit more. I'm already very much feeling the call to that. And this really, the rise of us like seeking and stepping into our own individual power, which is super exciting. And it feels like it's almost like there's no option to resist it anymore. We're kind of being gently pushed into it, and dropping this like guru mentality, or there will be a dropping of the guru mentality. And it's more of like, no, let me get clear and get real with who I am, what my power is, and let me really stand in that. Aquarius is a sign of technology, so who knows what could happen. AI, I'm sure we'll see a lot happening in AI, space exploration, all kinds of things in technology in the digital world. And again, like collective gathering, collective progress, disruption of systems, movement, grassroots movements. It's also, about uniqueness and kind of letting your freak flag fly. It's a rough one to say quickly. So it's going to be interesting, take this however you want. In my world, it feels like I have gone through, and I say this because I think so many of you probably feel this. It feels like I have gone through a deep, deep stage of transformation. And it's kind of like not a moment of like, okay, all done transforming, but it's like a moment of like, okay, now let's really step into and enjoy the work that we've done on ourselves. Like leave all that shit behind us. Leave all that's old baggage. It's no longer serving. We've stepped into a higher frequency and like, let's freaking go. Let's have some fun. Let's explore life in this new way, from this new perspective, from this new vibration, frequency, consciousness. And let's just see how good it can get. I'm excited. I hope you guys are feeling the good energy. I hope you're feeling, a sense of, again, leaving that baggage behind and a sense of pride in how far you've come. And again, let's see how good it can get. And also highly recommend taking your husband to jujitsu class. With that, I am so excited for today's episode. It is so on point, as things always tend to be because of collective energy and collective knowing. Today's episode is with the lovely Katherine Petrullo. She owns a company called Luminate. And Katherine is an expert coach and somatic practitioner who works with individuals to unlock their authenticity and empowerment. After years of personal self-discovery, Katherine began cultivating her experience as a practitioner and formulated a potent container to support others in their own growth. So, Katherine and I have a really incredible chat about personal transformation. And she really walks us through kind of the steps of and the journey of self-discovery, which is kind of exactly, that's kind of the path you need to walk on for transformation. It really is this journey of getting to know and to love yourself. And she, she shares some of her own experiences and what led her to this work and to coaching people in this way. Of course, like so many of us in this world, she had her own rock bottoms, her own intense experiences that she pulled herself up from and really transformed her life. And many of you know, any of you who have done that or are on the other side, as soon as you do it, you want to share it with other people because you just know, how good it can get. And you also know how bad it can be, right? So Katherine is doing that. She talks us through kind of the phases of transformation, how to navigate them, gives us tools and tips, talks about how she coaches people. Really breaks it down in a really beautiful way of like kind of step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like this is where you go on. This is where you are or how you walk through the path. She is incredibly intelligent. She is an incredible healer. I not only got the opportunity to know her through recording with her, but I got the opportunity to give her an oracle session and, see a little bit behind the scenes. And she is powerful. She is definitely one to watch. She is doing work and will be doing work that really, really makes a difference in this field and really is so important for what the moment is calling for, what people really need right now. And that is to understand and know and see their own personal power and own it for themselves and own it for the benefit of the collective. So I think you guys are really going to love this one. She's brilliant. Please check her out on social media at Katherine. Last name is Petrullu. Again, we'll put it all in the show notes. But this is a good one for those of you who are having your wake up, what the heck is going on moment, or maybe you're a few more steps into the journey. Katherine really shares stuff in a way that's super digestible, super actionable, really encouraging, and really helps you see like, oh, this is how I get to kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let us know what you think. Please follow us at Expanders Club on Instagram and TikTok. And, hit us up in the DMs. Let us know what you're liking, what questions you have, if there's any type of guest you'd like to see. Have a bunch of fun stuff planned for the new year. And certainly some fun Oracle updates and information in the magical higher consciousness realms, like waiting to come through to share with you guys. So would love to hear what you're liking or disliking, because I'm here to serve, and I'm here to make sure we're getting you the tools and information that is most helpful for your expansion. That is what this is all about. All right, friends, appreciate you. Happy Pluto moving into Aquarius. I hope you're all feeling it, and I hope you feel freedom and are excited for your personal empowerment journey. All right, see you soon. Katherine, hello. I am so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, and I'm super excited for today's conversation because the work you do is like the foundation, the entry point to everything. People, there's so much confusion in this like self-help spirituality world, and everyone wants joy, happiness. They want to be able to manifest. They want abundance. They want to connect to their guides or psychic powers. And we're skipping a lot of steps because that's the fun stuff, right? Of course we want to be able to manifest whatever we want. But when people ask me, or when I'm working with my own clients and I'm trying to get them on the path to how to get there, it always starts at the same place, and it's not really the it's like not the shiniest, cutest
Yes.
place, right? It is like it starts with understanding yourself.
hmm
So tell us about the work you do there and how you got there.
Absolutely. So my journey really began exactly where you just described. I was in this place of deep desperation, for lack
Mm-hmm.
of a better term.
Yeah.
And I placed all of my future happiness, joy, self-acceptance in what could I manifest. So
Mm-hmm.
when I manifested the abundance, when I manifested the partner, when I manifested the friend group, when people reflected back to me how amazing I was, then I would get to feel all of the good stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I would just live in that space because nothing would ever take me from that space.
Yeah.
And that's really how I started my personal transformation journey. It was fueled by desperation and very driven in how quickly can I change the external to not reflect the pain that I'm holding on to
Mm-hmm.
internally.
Mm-hmm.
And where I found myself in that journey was in these constant loops of doing all of the things. And feeling
Yes.
we all do it. I think this is where we kind of all
It's
start
it's
is
so
like,
relatable. Yes.
where can we bring it in from?
Mm-hmm.
And I would have these moments where I would feel really amazing and have these like brief spotlights of openness or elation. And then the second the external didn't reflect that, I would crumble.
Yep.
And the
Yep.
crumbling usually was more painful after feeling like, oh my gosh, I've healed it. I've fixed
Mm-hmm.
it. I'm better. And then I would perceive something as negative or counter to the healed version of myself. So, oh, if I was healed, this wouldn't happen to me, this wouldn't be reflected to me. And then I would go into disillusionment of, does this work? Is there any change? How can I actually heal?
Yep.
And it was through years of cycling through that I finally was able to switch the spotlight to internally to, well, what am I saying to myself? What am I reinforcing? Why am I holding myself hostage to how things show up externally in
Yep.
very particular ways? And how can I actually heal without needing my circumstances to radically change?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And probably too, something that it's so funny. Desperation is like the pathway to, self actualization or
hmm
expansion or growth. And you don't know that when you're in it. And it's funny because I have clients that certainly are in that place right now. Obviously, that's why they're coming to speak to a psychic or an oracle. And I'm just like, oh my God, you have no idea how lucky you are. Like, this is so good. This is so exciting. Like, this is the catalyst that you need for exponential growth and to take that leap and for change. Um, but it certainly doesn't feel that way when you're in it. And it's like, why the hell can't we just figure this out without getting to that place, like that, that dark night of the soul?
hmm
But for me, when I was in that place, all of the things you said for sure. And also I started to ask, like, who who am I actually? Like, who am I? What do I actually care about? What are my actual values? Like, which is a really kind of heartbreaking place to be, especially, when you're in your late 30s and you're like, oh, you have the realization of like, oh shit, I don't know if I've ever actually been myself in this lifetime.
Yeah. I feel that. Like, I just got chills hearing that because it is a place that I have been, and it kind of seems like there are layers to it. So, where you
Yeah.
see it, and then it's like the door opens wider, and it's like, oh my gosh, I have been disconnected from my
Mm-hmm.
authenticity. Where,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the people that I work with, when we open the discussion of, okay, what's the authentic self? it's almost like someone threw you into a room and shut all the lights off and is like, figure out what's inside.
Yes, I love
Because
that. Yes.
that's the only way I know to describe it, because it's this feeling of like, I actually am so turned about and I have no idea where to even start. So we'll say
Mm-hmm.
things like, oh, well, like authentically me is freedom, but we don't actually know what makes us feel. That concept is like this
Yes.
beautiful etheric energy that we actually don't know what it feels like in our physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of this space of being in like the desperation soup of like, nothing feels good, I really just want a way out, is also understanding of like, how do we start to embody different energies and how do we plug in to rediscover like what actually is a yes for us and
Yeah.
what actually is a
Yes.
no, because a lot of the times we just cling to an image of something because that's what allows us to feel like we can touch a certain energy.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
want the energy. The image is the
Mm-hmm.
least important part of that desire.
Yeah, so let's dig in. Like
Yeah.
I love that language, desperation soup. That's exactly what it feels like. And like the dark room, like you can't even see your hands in front of you. And so you're just like kind of taking baby steps, hoping you're going in the right direction. Where if someone's feeling that, where do they start?
So, my initial step in this process of coming home to the self, feeling aligned, feeling empowered, is just to start to tune into the concept of neutrality.
Hmm.
So, when we are able to begin to neutrally observe
Yeah.
what's going on internally, we're able to start the process of unraveling the patterning and the story that we are held within.
Okay.
I work in the plant medicine space, and I was sitting in a ceremony once, and every limiting belief kind of like flooded into my head at
Mm.
once, where I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I just want to crawl into a hole and like never come out. And what I love about working with medicine is it allows us to have momentary embodiment of concepts that we might know but haven't integrated into the physical yet. And in this like deep limiting belief version of myself, I just felt this energy come through of, you don't have to believe this.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
you are the one screaming these stories and confirming them, and our brain is wired to create patterns. So when we lock in on a story, our brain is going to be like, cool, I'm going to look to confirm this in everything
Yeah.
around me.
Yeah.
So we quite literally put blinders on and start the process of reaffirming and reaffirming and reaffirming. And our body doesn't know that that's actually not our most expanded version of self.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally, we can be like, this is not good and it doesn't feel great. But what we're programming into ourselves is repeat this, follow this, find more of this. And so when we're able to start to create a little bit of distance between getting that hit of that belief and creating a story, taking
Mm-hmm.
action, building from that place, we're able to start to invite in that observer. And that observer is able to say, okay, what does this feel like in my physical body? Where am I holding this energy?
Yes.
Does it feel
Yeah.
good? Do I want more of it? Do I want less of it? And then it's, okay, where is my mind going? What am I telling myself? So, an example is, you can have a really bad date and feel really badly about it and just kind of like have the ick, but it doesn't need to compound into I am unlovable, I am
Yes.
unworthy,
Yep.
there's no one out there for me who could ever care for me. Those
Mm-hmm.
are stories that we're using that one external stimuli to confirm. Versus if we're able to build that awareness, it's like, okay, this doesn't feel good. This is definitely a no for me. Now, how can I move myself back to a place of peace and of centered alignment? And so when we build that distance, we become really, really empowered in our ability to start to move through things.
Yes, I love that. And do you feel like in that observation, and I loved how you described it, invite in the observer. I've looked at it as like choosing to not be reactive.
Yeah.
Same exact thing, right? It's
Mhm.
like you kind of put some time and space, like maybe no one externally recognizes it, but you put some time and space in between the action and emotion and your
Mhm.
reaction and emotion. So,
Yes.
do you feel like recognizing it is enough, or do we then need to dig in and like get to the bottom of why we have those stories and solve that also?
So I'm definitely solution oriented. Recognizing it is the first step
Mm-hmm.
because once we're able to, like you said, create that distance, well, then we have some room to play. Okay,
Yeah.
if we have this distance, what do we want to fill it with? What do we want to do? I am a little bit split on whether I believe we need to know exactly what the root
Mm-hmm.
is. I think in some cases we are able to access a deeper understanding, and that's supportive in releasing the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Other times, I think sometimes when we get really attached to where did this come from? What is the root? What is the why? It's almost a way of keeping us in our suffering.
Yeah.
So, I am a big advocate of going and doing deep meditations. I have been through a lot of hypnotherapy myself, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful and it's expansive. But I also love to tell people I work with, don't worry if you can't get to that like one core memory that holds it all, because ultimately, what we need to do when we're realizing a pattern and a belief is prime our nervous system to know that we're safe letting go of that belief,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a part of our brain that only cares about, are we alive or are we not alive? Very black and white. And so you could be suffering in these stories, in these narratives, but you're alive. So your brain is going to say it's safe to be here. We know the threat. We know how to survive the threat. I
Mm-hmm.
would rather be here than step into a new playing field with new beliefs that I don't know what that means for me. So I like to take people into deep somatic work, which also allows us to
Yeah.
expand the time between thought and reaction and set the nervous system up to really be prepared to implement new beliefs. And
Yeah.
then we start the pattern of reprogramming the brain where, okay, my body is calm. I'm ready to bring forth change. What do I want to hold myself to? So, this is where we kind of tap into the expanded self. So,
Mm-hmm.
if there is a version of us that exists in the future that is more aligned, more empowered, more in joy, you get to invite them into that space and ask, like, okay, how would you want to hold this? How would you talk to yourself? How would
Yeah.
you take action? But we can't do that when we're reacting to the trigger, because then we're just either responding in our old pattern or desperately trying to run away from the pattern.
Yeah.
But the pattern is still the focal point.
Yes. Yeah.
What we want to do is acknowledge the pattern, calm the body, invite in the higher self.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start to create this cycle where we're able to take action in moving through our patterns. And when we know that we can do this, we become less afraid to be like, you know what, this feels like a really tough pattern that I'm living in. Like, I'm going to call myself out and be honest that, I think I'm being the victim right now. And I'm being the victim because it feels really safe, but it's not empowering me. Or I'm not taking the action that I want to take because I'm scared, but that's not empowering me. It's a much more neutral mindset to what's actually going on inside.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when we don't feel like we're empowered to move it, we become very judgmental of ourselves and very shame based.
Why do you think when we think about relationships, a lot of us are certainly thinking outward, and it's almost like the last relationship that we like put attention and time into is the relationship to and with self.
Yeah.
What has gotten us here?
I think that we are in a society that really values the other and
Mm.
what's going on externally.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not ever really taught to tune into what is true for us.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
think back to school. It's very much like, here's what matters. Here's
Mm-hmm.
what means success in these things that matter. Here's what means failure. Nothing else really plays into the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus like what would happen if as children we were asked, tune in to what lights you up. And that doesn't
Yeah.
mean ignore everything else in the world, but simply tune into what feels good for you. And then opening the door even further of, and what does success feel like for you?
Mm-hmm.
We are
Mm-hmm.
so placed externally from such a young age that I think that when we get to this point in our lives, like I cannot tell you how many people have come to me and been like, I did it all. Like I achieved all of the things and I've burnt out or I got sick or it
Yeah.
felt horrible and
Yeah.
I wanted to burn my life to the ground because all of the things didn't work out. And that's also my personal journey. My pivotal spiral that brought me into self-transformation was there was no check mark left for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so all of a sudden it became this journey of, okay, none of this is working. And I tried to really make it work. I was like, let's just keep achieving more, getting more validation. I was kind of like this insatiable pit of like, I need to be validated. But it wasn't until I realized like, oh, I have not connected to myself at all in this journey. There is
Yeah.
no relationship with me, what I like, what I dislike. It is all based on how others perceive me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what has led us here. And that's where we need to start to move from is how can we get back home to ourselves and allow the external to reflect our best and brightest self.
Yeah, I love that. And how can someone recognize that without the full crash, the desperation soup, I've expressed it as like being at the bottom of a pit. Like,
Mhm.
what are the signs? How do we stop someone from falling down into the pit?
Yeah. And I think the advice is so funny because it's so simple, which is start to slow down.
Mm,
And I
mm.
have gone through practices where I literally will slow how I physically walk to a point where I'm like, this feels a little uncomfortable. But start to slow down. And the same way we want to create space between our thought and our action, we want to create space between actions in our lives. So slowing down and tuning into, okay, how am I feeling? Am I filling my days with things because there's
Yeah.
actually kind of a constant lump in my throat, or because when I sit by myself, I want to crawl out of my own skin? These are all indications that something's going on in the nervous system, and there's some energetic stuff that wants to come out and get cleared.
Well, I actually love that example as like a simple place to start, like looking at your calendar or your schedule that you've set for yourself, or as you're saying yes or no to things and saying like, is this something I actually want to do? Or am I doing this because it looks good or it makes someone else happy? Like that was it. That's a place that I still, need a little bit of practice in and exercise. But that was one of the first places that was easy for me to start to like even be able to create that time to then
Yeah.
slow down and think and be with myself is like, let me go to my calendar and like start to remove the things that I don't actually need to do. I'm just doing out of guilt or because I feel like I should or someone else wants me to.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about the external world is that it's really helpful for teaching us what's going on internally. So
Yeah.
when we're no longer focused on creating in the external world and validating, we can kind of use it as this tremendous tool for self-exploration, where it's like, look at your calendar, tune into how you feel doing certain things. Like for me, this is such, again, a comically simple example, but I used to resist working out all the time. And then there was a moment where I was like, do I actually enjoy the
Mm.
workouts that I'm choosing, or do I do them because that's what I've been told
Yes.
is the best thing to do and will make my body the
Yeah.
most socially acceptable? And I realized that that was my only motivation for doing the exact workouts that I was doing. So it was very high intensity, it was a lot of running. And my body really enjoys yoga and slowing down and being really present with myself. And so it was even just starting to use those moments of like, why am I resisting this? Is it resistance because it's aligned with my dreams and it kind of scares me to achieve that? Or is it resistance because my body just doesn't like it? And
Yeah.
I'm using my mind to override what my body is telling me. So use what's around you as your starting place. Slow down to really allow yourself to come up with a response to things. Because a lot of the times we're moving so fast, it's easy to be like, well, I don't know how I feel. I feel fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say like just starting to ask why in kind of
Mhm.
everything that you're doing? Why am I doing this? Why am I feeling this way? Yeah, why kind
Yeah.
of leads you to a lot of answers.
Start with the exploration, play with the why, and even just taking like a round of box breath. So 4 count
Mm,
in, 4 count hold, 4 count exhale, 4 count hold. And then tuning into why do I want this? Why am I choosing to do this activity? Why am I choosing to eat this meal? Why am I choosing this drink? Like
mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
really getting playful with it. Because the more we can ask ourselves, like I started a process when I was early on where it was kind of like dating myself, where I'm like, I wouldn't go on a date and not ask questions.
Yeah, I
Yet
love
we
that.
never do it to ourselves.
Yes.
Ask yourself why. Get to know yourself. Treat it like you are the most interesting human being that you've ever gotten to experience, and you just want to learn everything because the
Yes.
information you'll receive is incredible.
Oh, yeah. I love that. And we have had people on the podcast and we hear, plenty through the wellness world that like the key to longevity and joy and vibrancy is to love yourself.
Mhm.
And I really think like to know yourself is to love yourself. Like those just go, everyone's like, well, how do I love myself? And it's like you just have to get to know yourself and see the beauty and the amazingness there.
It really is. And I think that one of the greatest things that we ever get to do in this lifetime is really explore ourselves. And we learn how to hold ourselves and so we can hold others. We learn how to expand
Mm-hmm.
ourselves so
Mm-hmm.
we can support others in our expansion. So, this journey of self love is one that allows us to beam that out to the world, which I think is something we desperately need at this time, but it's one of the most rewarding journeys we can take because we get this beautiful inner world that also allows us to shine that forward in our outer world.
Yeah, and I would go as far as saying it's irresponsible not to know yourself and be living from that place. It, doesn't serve you, it doesn't serve your kids, your husband or wife or your partner, it doesn't serve your family members, it doesn't serve your community. It's like starting every day at a major disadvantage.
Absolutely agreed. I think that we desperately need this. We all deserve it. It's a beautiful gift to be able to hold yourself in love and compassion, but you're right. Everyone in your life benefits from this awareness. And everyone in your life is able to be held differently by you
Mm-hmm.
through this awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So when we disconnect from our intentionality and our alignment, it doesn't serve anybody. But again, we're often taught that self sacrifice is how you show
Yes.
love. And
Yes.
so even starting this journey of really focusing inward can almost feel selfish. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with at the beginning is how do I step into being very aware and holding space for myself without feeling like I'm being selfish?
Well, let's go back to something that you said early on where you said, and this is absolutely true, and I've experienced it myself in positive ways and in negative ways, that your outer world reflects your inner world.
Mhm.
And so I think, and maybe you can give some more language and some examples around that, but I think when you understand that concept, like you are very motivated to get shit straight in the inner, in your inner world, because it does impact everything outwardly.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think that this is a concept where when I first started working with it, I got it completely wrong. Where I thought that it's like, okay, you do enough healing and then like the external world becomes perfect and
Mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
never have to navigate any sort of challenging emotion or challenging period of time, which is not the goal, nor is it I don't believe, fully possible. However, our internal world is really how we relate and connect to the external world. So when we start to tune in, the external world can be an incredible teacher, because what is getting triggered within us by the external is something that's already a pain point within us.
Yep.
We don't get
Yeah.
triggered by things that are not lit up somewhere in our system already. That's why some insults really, really sting while others don't hit. Or some compliments, you're like, yes, I received this. And others are like, oh no, you've gotten this wrong.
Yeah.
Because what we're being impacted by externally is what's lit up in our internal system. But when we begin to heal and we begin to connect to the external world differently, so that of the neutral observer and also that of our highest self. So when we take action, we're not reacting to trigger, we're aligning with our highest self and moving forward from there. We are able to shift to the external world because we're basically from one side processing all the information of like, okay, this is what feels good, this is what doesn't, this is what I want to heal a little bit more deeply, this is what I want to embody. And then we're taking actions that allow us to step into more alignment, which aligned action is actually very scary to take because it feels a little bit bigger than you would like to be in this. I worked with an expansion coach, and I remember I got on the call and I was like, there's nothing she can do to shake me. The first task that she had for me, I was like sweating. I was
I
like,
love
this
that.
is so scary. Even though it was really doing the work to step forward as the person that I wanted to be. And that's the person that you are like, oh, when I have this many followers on Instagram, I'll reach out to this brand. When I have made this much money, I'll, say that
Feel
I'm a business
validated.
on
Yes.
Instagram, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you start to take these actions that allow you to expand. And that's how we begin to shift our our external reality. It's not by waiting for it to show us that we are worthy.
Yeah.
It's by using the information of like what's triggered, what's alive and well, and then pressing against that scope of possibility and really playing in the field of I know how to get back to safety, so I'm going to take big, bold actions towards my greatness.
Yeah.
And that's when we really see one big shift start to occur, and also learn the language of communicating the internal and the external.
Yeah. And I love all of that. And I think a very simple example is I see it all the time with my daughter, my 3-year-old. If I could still be externally operating in the same way or think that I am. But if I am off internally, if I'm feeling anxious or if I'm not feeling grounded or something's on my mind that I'm like distracted, I see it impact her. And it is the difference. It's night and day. Like we could go have a night when I'm good internally and I've like got myself. She's perfect, eats dinner perfectly, plays, is so sweet, takes her bath, gets ready for bed, goes down for bed easily. If I'm not, and I again could still be doing the exact same actions externally, we have our nighttime routine, it doesn't change. But if I'm not good internally, if I'm anxious, if I'm distracted, if I haven't done the work for myself, if I have stories going, she's nuts. Like none of it goes well. The whole routine is every single step of it is off and it's me dragging her and us fighting and it really just all has to do with internally. How am I feeling? How stable am I internally? And that energy, kids, and I mean, adults feel it too, but maybe are a little less reactive or maybe we see it show up differently. But kids are just so in tune to that energy. It's so obvious.
Yeah. And the more I've worked with energy, the more I've kind of come to the belief that really in all energy work, in any sort of human exchange, we're in the exchange of transmission. So what I embody either sparks something within you or triggers something within you. And so when we're off, it's almost like that's our transmission. we're in our anxiety, we're transmitting that around us. So it might not be communicated as like, okay, I'm enveloping this other person in anxiety and
Right.
asking them to share in it with me, but what we're transmitting is a little less comfortable. It's a little bit more agitating, and especially with children, because kids can feel everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can see those things start to switch and behaviors start to mimic. And it's why doing the work first is so important, because what we are holding as our transmission will impact
Yeah.
others as well.
Yeah. I love putting it that way, our transmission. What is your relationship, or how do you talk about or teach people about the soul?
So, the soul is an interesting concept because I feel like we all relate to it very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I've always tried to do in all of my teachings is to create a space where everyone can relate to these concepts. Because I think that, to some people who might be really grounded in science and, okay, how can I make this tangible? How can I bring this into my reality? Talking about the soul might feel like a really etheric concept versus some
Mm-hmm.
people are so comfortable in the unseen, where
Yeah.
it's like you talk about the soul and they drop in and it's like, yes. But for me, there's always been this pulse of how do we invite everyone into this space? Because I think that there is
Yeah.
beauty in everything. So I view the soul as, what is your truest essence
Mm.
outside of any conditioning, any programming, and any limitation? So, full freedom, full expansion. What is there? What is true?
Mm. I love that. What what is what is yours?
I think that mine and everyone's is pretty much the same, where if you keep digging, we all get to unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
all the stuff, whether it's generational trauma, past life trauma, current life trauma, societal trauma, we've gotten disconnected from that source.
Mm-hmm.
We've created a lot
Mm-hmm.
of otherness, of a lot of separation from the fact that ultimately, when you boil it down, we can all tap into this energy of deep, unconditional love.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes I think moving back to that feels really radical,
Mm.
but it is the place of deepest fulfillment.
Yeah. I mean, think about when people have a baby, or like when a baby comes into the family, like that is what you feel for this like brand new being. You don't know them, they're brand new, like you have no experiences with them. And that is, I think that's why it's such a like celebratory, like amazing thing, because I've seen it just the ripple effect through my own family when I had a baby. Like it does remind people of unconditional love and
Yeah.
like starts to change people.
Yeah. And then it's so funny how it's like as we grow, it's almost like we disconnect from
Oh,
that reminder of like we came in as unconditional love.
yeah.
Like, how
Yeah.
can we continue to hold each other and see each other as that?
Yeah. And to not add these conditioning to our kids. Like I said, my daughter's 3 and she is unconditional love. Everyone she loves, she's high, everything's great, joy, like, and how do we not add the conditioning that creates the separation and creates the stories and creates the fears? That's something that is obviously very top of mind for me because, like, again, I've witnessed it through her for myself. Like, oh, we come in perfect. We come in aligned with our soul. We come in knowing and being unconditional love. Like, I just want to like put a bubble around her, and keep her that way.
Yeah.
Um, talk talk to us about plant medicine.
Mm.
I think that it's a really interesting part of people's journey. I have a lot of friends doing plant medicine journeys now. I, for better or worse, came up through the life at a time where it was called getting high. I guess it wasn't, there was no plant medicine. I've done plenty of plant medicine recreationally, and had profound experiences. But it's a little bit like newer as far as being acceptable and less recreational.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that it's a profound tool. Like, how do you use it? What have you seen? Who is it right for?
Yeah. So I think plant medicine has been one of the most impactful tools that I have ever worked with.
Mm.
I was in the work of self-exploration for, I want to say 5 years before I had my first plant medicine encounter. And it blew the lid off of everything
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
had been working on, thought I knew, had been trying to work with. It was like this explosive catalyst. Now, that is not to say that it was not an incredibly challenging catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
To have that
Mm-hmm.
much growth that quickly was very, very difficult for me. And I was so wildly uninformed going into this. um, like looking back at it now, I was like, I knew nothing. But I think that if it speaks to you and it aligns with you, it's absolutely a space worth exploring, because my journey began with ayahuasca medicine, which is something I don't work with often, but it was absolutely pivotal, and it is the foundation for the coaching that I do. It is
Mm-hmm.
based on information and integration that I received from this medicine. It allowed me to understand expansion, and then it also brought me really, really deep into my own suffering.
Mm.
And then that it unlocked the world for me to start working with mushroom medicine, which I do extensively. It is such an important practice and ceremony for me. And I personally work with these medicines in ceremonial spaces. And, like you said, a lot of people were introduced to these medicines in recreational ways. Ayahuasca, not so much. I think
Yeah.
that's always been
Yeah,
held
that
in a
doesn't
bit
really
more
sound fun.
container. I could not imagine, like, going out
Not a
to a
good time.
and I think that medicine, it's like the journey it will take you on is the journey it will take you on.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in, you know, the mushroom space, there's a lot of people who use it strictly recreationally, and it's a very different experience of the medicine. I think the medicine, when you microdose it, can be beautiful in those
Mm-hmm.
spaces where it's very heart opening, it's very connected. But when you want to do a deep dive with the medicine, bringing it into sacred space, allowing it to really guide you on your journey is so important, because what medicine work does is it allows us to witness our shadows,
Mm-hmm.
feel what we need to feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's so embodied, where if you are going into something, you will feel the depths of which you're holding on to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have grieved in plant medicine ceremony in a way that I didn't even know I could grieve.
Mm-hmm.
I have experienced sadness that I was holding on to, anger, and been able to release it productively, because it really brings you to the depths of what you're holding on to. And it also invites in the energy of embodied knowingness. So
Yes.
we're able to release, and then we're also able to really have moments where we feel the wisdom that we might cognitively know, but don't know how to actually live from, because we're taking it from the mind into the body and then through every part of our energetic field. So it's a really powerful medicine for tapping into what is possible and why we want to be in the practice of releasing, of letting go, of clearing ourselves, because we're able to feel our expanded self.
Yeah. I love that. And a much like less professional way that I've explained it to friends who have been nervous about going into their own ceremonies is it allows for you to expand to a different level of consciousness. It
Yeah.
gets like the kind of that first layer of like the human brain and thoughts and attachments out of the way. You don't have to like work through that. That just kind of moves to the side and lets you see and work on things from an expanded place.
Yeah. And I think even the art of going into ceremony is a ceremony of itself. Because, like you said, when your friends come to you and they're scared, working through that fear, whether you sit or not, is such a powerful journey. Surrendering to the fact that, yeah, you are submitting to the medicine.
Yeah.
It will, bring forth what it wants to bring forth to support your healing, but you don't get to control, how everything goes.
Yes, yes.
So even the exploration of medicine work, I think, is sacred because it leads us on such a journey of, once again, tuning into the body. Okay, like, why do I want to work with this medicine? What feels true? What does this fear that I might have? Because, like, I think fear is very normal when you sit
Yes.
with any medicine. Even if you sit frequently, having fear or nerves is very, very normal. And I think part of the human experience. But sitting with yourself, reflecting on, is this a stopping point fear or is this an expansion point fear? You learn to tune in, and then the medicine allows you to tune in and unlock the next level of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Let's talk about shadow self and shadow work, because there's no question that stuff comes up, and that's the stuff really that we're all afraid of, right?
Yeah.
That's that's the not fun part. That's what we don't want to face. Tell me about your experience with it, how you work with it with people, how you help people through and past the shadows.
Yeah. So with shadow work, I struggled through it at the beginning of my personal journey. I feel like so much of what I teach is like, so I tried every way to avoid that.
Fair. I understand that. I relate to that. Yes.
Like, I did all the running so we can expedite that piece
Yes.
for you.
Yes. Well,
But
I love that, because when you do that, when you are on your own journey, the minute you figure something out, you're like, I need to share this with everyone. I need to tell them, like, don't go through the path I did because that was so hard and unnecessary. Like, here's the unlock. So I love that you had that experience and then are sharing the easier path with people.
yes, and I think that, everyone in the space of healing is doing that in whatever form worked for them, which I think is so beautiful and so empowering because it's like, listen, there are a million ways to do this. What resonates with you?
Yes.
And like,
Yes.
let's all help each other on this
Yes.
journey so
Yes.
that we're not continuing this suffering any longer than it needs to.
I agree with that, but also I think it's important for people to know, like, do not skip ahead. Do not skip to the manifesting. Do not skip to, the seeking the soul relationship. Like, if you do not go through this doorway and walk down this path first of this self-discovery, this self-knowing, which you and I both agree leads to self-love and probably leads to a lot of unconditional love also for yourself and others. Like, if you do not get that aligned, I honestly believe and would love for you to weigh in, Katherine, like, I don't think you can do the other things because you're doing it from this misaligned place. Like, how could you manifest what you want when you might not even actually know what you want or what's right for your soul journey or your purpose or your mission? Like, so I think it's really important. Everyone, like I said in the beginning, everyone wants to skip ahead to the fun stuff. Trust me. Again, I've tried it, and I'm sure you have too, Katherine. Like, I'm like, yes, let me just go to manifesting, figure that out, and then everything will be good. And that's just not how it works. So like, mute everything else, get right with yourself, and then the world is your oyster.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of brings us very naturally back to the shadow self, because as much as we want to out manifest our shadow, we could nail it with our manifestations. Like the exact, the picture of the partner, the picture of the job, the picture of the house. And if we're still carrying the same shadows, they're just going to morph into different versions of themselves.
Yes.
But they come with us.
Let's just define that for a minute, because I want people to really understand that they're going to morph into and Katherine, feel free to add or adjust if you don't agree, they're going to morph into, yes, you find a partner and get married, but maybe it's not the right partner. Maybe there's friction in the relationship. Maybe it ends in divorce eventually. Like, yes, you get a job that maybe has certain things that you're excited about, but maybe it results in a bad boss that's here to teach you more, to remind you more of those lessons. Like, what other things have you seen? Just because I think this is a really, really important for people to understand there are consequences to skipping.
Absolutely. And, for me, what kept coming up was, so for work, for example, so I manifested jobs and had the bad bosses. Like, I was in positions where I wasn't happy. My first job was a horrible experience for me. But then I also manifested jobs where I was really seen and I was really held. And I never got to enjoy it because that
Mm.
unworthiness was always in the back of my mind
Yeah.
of, well, you know what? Like, you're not actually that good. I'm sure everyone will see it eventually.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to make a mistake because the fear that would come up just from me, again, like this job was otherwise really solid.
Yeah.
But I wasn't able to experience the beauty of being in a job, of a company that I enjoyed, and with people that I enjoyed. And I was being witnessed for the work that I was doing because the voice in my head that was,
Yeah.
you're so unworthy, you're not talented, was
Mm-hmm.
so loud that it didn't actually even matter what was going on in the job.
Yep.
I was still in a state of, no, those voices are true. So when are they going to show up? I was constantly looking for them. And
Mm.
what happens in that scenario is you start to burn out because you're always
Mm-hmm.
on high alert,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to make more mistakes because you're in a state of fight or flight
Yeah.
versus grounded alignment. So it can even just be the voices in your head don't change. And I think that happens a lot in partnership as well, where if we don't know how to love ourselves, we don't get to fully feel loved in a partnership.
Yes. Yeah.
Partners can support us in integrating more deeply into our self love, to experiencing new layers of love. But if we're at a place where we cannot feel our own self love, it's going to be really, really hard for a partner to show up and crack that open for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we might, if we have those stories of unworthiness or undeserving, we will probably attract the partner we think we deserve at that moment. And yeah. Yeah. So all that to say, there, it is, there's no like easy button. There's no skip ahead button. But this work is actually so rewarding. And the minute that you start working on it, you don't have to be fully, quote unquote fixed or fully embodied or fully perfectly aligned for it to start working. My experience has been the minute you have the willingness to do the work and you start to show up even just a little bit, the signs come in, and that's what gets you to the next step and gets you to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that when you just start the process of exploration, you are automatically dropped into the energy of self-love. Even if you can't feel it, even if you can't experience it, to step forward and show up for yourself, even if it's just saying, I think there is more.
Yeah.
I think that I can feel more freedom, more love. I deserve to feel free and loved,
Yeah.
is showing up in radical self-love for yourself. And so I think that right when you start this work, things start to open, even if it's shadows start to come up. But it's almost like, okay, the self-love is starting to appear.
Yes.
What do we need to clear to get there?
Yeah.
What can we show to actually move this process along? And how can we start to allow more space to be created for this energy?
Yeah. Yeah. And what does the moment of arrival look like? Like what does it look like to be fully aligned, embodied, to love yourself?
I I feel like it feels like taking a really deep breath
Mm,
after holding your breath for a really long time. And I don't know if there is one moment of arrival, because I waited for that where it's like,
mm-hmm.
oh, the version of me that just snaps to and
Yeah.
does all the right things. But what I've cultivated over the past decade of doing this work that I'm really proud of. And when I look at this part of me, I'm like, oh my gosh, the growth that
Mm-hmm.
this aspect of
Mm-hmm.
self has experienced is incredible. And it's the safety within myself
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
to know I am more than my darkest thoughts, and the unrelenting support I give myself
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in my growth. I will go to the mat to help myself grow.
Yeah.
I will push myself. I will be uncomfortable for me. I will try new things and fail at new things for myself. But it's that constant return to I love you and I want you to experience the greatness
Yes.
of this existence.
Yeah.
And I think that has been my arrival moment for me is I can get knocked off. I can take some hard falls and I will crawl my way back to that. And
Yes.
just
Yes.
knowing that I can do that now, because that was not me
Yeah.
at the beginning of this journey, is so profound.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that explanation. I think one thing that I noticed for me, and again, I think it's like, it's a constant evolution, right? The way we've talked about it is like this this evolution through expansion, and I don't think there's like our most expanded version is probably off the planet, right? Like it is we're no longer in this body, so like, we can keep expanding. We've got a ways to go over in this body. But for me, it felt like, and again, not that I've reached a point, but that safety and comfort feeling of like, oh, I've like got this, I've got myself. It felt almost like I was in my body for the very first time, and like, oh, now I operate from this place where I'm fully. It's not like all these different vibrations around me. It's not compartmentalizing pieces of me. It's not my soul wanting one thing, but me acting and doing another thing. It's like it's all one. And I've started to feel this feeling of like, wow, I am really in my body for the first time, and it feels good. It's like just like flow, everything operating from the same place.
Oh, I love that. I love the way you put that as being in your body for the first time.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've experienced this, and I think a lot of people have, of that like wish of like not in like a suicidal or scary way, but a way of like, I don't belong here.
Mhm.
Like I've had moments where I've been like, okay, come get me, take me home now. Like I do not
Mhm.
belong on this planet. This is really hard. Like I don't understand this. And that is like, that's a weird, it's a weird
Yeah.
feeling. Um, and like the universe doesn't really know what to do with that, right?
Yeah. And I think that our awareness is so vital in
Mm,
this whole journey. And so when we are disconnected from the awareness of self, it is really hard to know what to do with that, because it's like, okay, we're not tuning into this technology that we have of how to maneuver through this existence.
right,
And
right.
so that embodiment piece is so vital to this work, because, even if you know everything logically on how to heal and how to be the best version of yourself, until you come home and bring it into the body, it's always going to feel like it's floating away, and you're going to kind of float away to follow that.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it's like to bring it back in, to move through all the energy that might be held within our bodies, to clear it and to make space for yourself is massive. And
Yeah.
it's such a huge step in this work.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to truly believing too that we kind of are the masters of our destiny. We have the ability to create our reality. We are the ones in charge. right? Of our little world. And like that can be intimidating if you
Mhm.
haven't done the work. But I think once you have, that becomes really exciting, and it makes life way more fun and interesting. And like you said earlier, instead of reacting to things, you get to observe and be like, okay, and this is interesting. Why is this happening? If everything's happening for me, why is this happening? How
Mhm.
is this in alignment? How is this isn't like, it just gives you this, you're operating from this completely different perspective where you have so much time to understand, process, see things. You don't have to react. You don't have to get caught in this like lower level of consciousness where you are just in survival mode, reactivity, doing. And that is, to me, that is freedom.
That
Like
is.
the freedom to be in an expansive place and see everything from that place.
Absolutely. I had a really wonderful mentor describe to me the difference between fate and destiny. And
Hmm.
she was like, fate is the hand that you are dealt.
Yeah.
And when we are on the fated path, like you said, we're kind of just allowing things to happen for us based on, what has happened in the past and what seems available in the future. But when we do the work, which all transformational work is the work of switching from the fated path to the destined path,
Yes. Yes.
we're able to almost just like look at the soil that we're standing on and be like, what can I grow here? And we
Yes.
become this super empowered being because it's no longer about, okay, what's happening to me? It's like, I am the vessel that decides what this becomes. It's why alchemy is such a popular term in spirituality, because what happens when we become the
Yes.
alchemist, when we become the masters of our own destiny? Everything works for us.
Yes.
Not because it's all perfect, but because we're bringing it through the self and turning it into gold.
I think that's one of the fun signs, like the rewards on the journey where you start to be like, okay, I am getting this, is when you see your perspectives start to shift in language and the way that you look at things. Just like you said, like, this is not happening to me, this is happening for me, or
Mhm.
this is really hard, or maybe it's like, oh, this is a really interesting lesson, like, and kind of in this place. And I'm sure you've experienced this, like, where everything kind of becomes true at the same time, like even things that are opposite, and you're in the place of just seeing that and
Mhm.
understanding that and like not having any attachment to any of it.
Mhm.
I'm like, I hope that makes sense and doesn't sound crazy. Maybe you can say it in a better way, but
I mean, what I do that I feel like is kind of that like sitting in the middle of duality and just kind
mm-hmm.
of like, yeah, there does not have to be one ultimate answer to this. But one of the practices that I do is when I'm really in the process of an emotion. Because I think part of this work of really becoming a master of your own destiny and feeling empowered is giving yourself a lot of space to process emotion. Because if we don't
Mm-hmm.
process it, if
Yes.
we try to jump straight to, well, this is happening for me, but what you're experiencing is grief, well, we're just going to get into, kind of that toxic positivity mindset that doesn't actually allow us to feel empowered. We're actually terrified of kind
Yes.
of like what we're packing into the box of our bad emotions. But sometimes when I'm in an emotion, so let's say like I'm so disappointed and I'm feeling really small. I'm an entrepreneur, so it's been a year and a half in my business. There have been a
Mm,
lot of moments
yes.
where people have been like, "Oh, you're handling like entrepreneurship so well. How are you doing it?" And I'm like, "Oh, I give myself like a space once a week to like really cry
I
and
love
like
that.
scream and let it out."
I love
But
that.
what I'll do during it is I'll be crying, I'll be grieving, and I'll kind of just like joke with the universe. I am like a babbler, whatever works for
Yes.
whoever's
Yes.
listening. It doesn't have to be this, but I'll just be like, I don't like, I know this is supposed to be for me, but like I hate it this way. And just kind of sharing in like, yes, there's a higher level belief that I know will integrate at one point, but like this piece sucks. This
Yeah.
piece is shitty. This piece is gross. And
Yes.
so that's kind of how I've started to play in like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. I can be so deeply human and feel
Yes.
disappointment and
Yes.
feel embarrassed. And honestly not be fully free of the shadowy sides of myself. And I can still be connected to this higher power, this better version of self, this deep divine trust that I can make everything work for me. And I can also not like having to do that.
Yeah. And I think surprisingly, or at least surprisingly to me, like you said, allowing yourself the time and space to actually fully feel those emotions and process them in whatever way you have to, whether it's writing them down, or like I decided that I was going to write like poetry to process some of my childhood traumas. I got this whole notebook. I, had a Saturday where I was writing. I was listening to Taylor Swift's new album. I'm not a Swiftie, was not before this anyway, but somehow like one of the songs came across like my Spotify and I was like, let me listen to this. Set me down this whole path of listening to her songs and like writing out stuff and crying. Let me tell you, I wrote that day in that journal. I wrote, maybe 10 pages worth of stuff. I've never picked up that journal again, not because I like I'm avoiding it, like it just processed. It felt so freaking good. I felt like I lost 10 pounds off of my body. Like it was like, cool. I just needed to like really process that. And that somehow that way to do that fell into my lap and that worked for me. But I think it's like finding what works for you and like committing to processing it as it's coming up and feels right.
Absolutely. And like, let it be weird. Like
Yes.
I have done
Yes. I
times
love
where
that.
like I've been like screaming and punching a pillow and be like, I feel weird doing this, but like
Yes.
even giving yourself permission to explore, and like
Mm-hmm.
some of it will work, some of it won't. But one of the best teachings that I received, and I got to experience this personally on a medicine journey I did, but someone said that one of the reasons we don't go into these feelings is because we have this fear that we will never get out of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mentioned the
That's fair.
grief processing that I got to experience a bit earlier, but when I went into this grief in my ceremony, I was crying so deeply. It felt like it was coming up from my toes through my eyes. Like my whole
Mm-hmm.
body was
Mm-hmm.
shaking in this cry. And there was a moment where I was like, I don't think I will ever stop crying. Like I am going to be this sadness. Like there's so much here. This is all I am now. And like this is why I wouldn't go this deep.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was like, okay, there's a facilitator here. If I need to come out of this, they will come and get me. They will help me out of this hole. So I went all the way in, and then it was like I hit bottom. And very similarly to you, it felt like I lost 10 pounds
Yeah.
and the grief was just gone. And
It's
so
wild.
when we
Yes.
do these practices, it's scary to go in, and there might be that part of you that's like, I don't know if this ever ends. I don't know if this rage ever ends, this sadness, this guilt, whatever it may
Mm-hmm.
be, to
Mm-hmm.
really let ourselves experience what we're holding back from. We will hit a bottom
Yeah.
of those emotions and it will
Yeah.
feel so free.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I still can feel that those freeing moments where you're just like, oh shit, like
Mhm.
this is different. This feels good. Yeah. And I think that goes back to what you said before. Like at our core, we are all unconditional love. And like, so we're just shedding and pulling back the layers that then get us back to that remembering and that being.
Yeah.
I would say, like, especially if you're someone who feels like you kind of have hit rock bottom or are having a dark night of the soul, I highly, highly recommend getting a coach or some help through this work. Like it is a lot to do on your own. I had two coaches through it, and years of modalities and tools. And so I would definitely say, like, do not take this out like on your own. Like cut your gym membership, cut whatever you need to do to like be able to afford a coach for this, because going back to, again, I think one of the foundational things of doing this work is feeling safe. And whether you are at a place where you can create that safety for yourself, eventually you will, or it is you need some outside help. Like for me, a coach was a safe place, like was some safety, and until I could build up my own safety to continue the work on my own.
Absolutely. I don't know if I will ever want to do this fully without a coach.
Yeah.
I have gone
Fair.
in and out of like how deep a container I've been in.
Yes.
But I think that one of the beautiful benefits of working with others on this journey is we are held in safety and we're also held in a really honest reflection.
Yes.
So
Yes.
navigating through things, especially if you're in a dark night of the soul, it feels like, okay, I don't actually know how to do this. Like, what is the next move? What is the right thing? And so having someone to support you in that is really, really potent. But then also, no matter what stage you're in, having that honest reflection of where we might be, you know, holding ourselves back, where we might be in a story that we're not fully aware of just yet is really powerful. And I think that we are here to help each other. We're here to support each other. And, you know, I believe the roles of coaches can change over time. And, you know, you might be coaching someone one day and then they coach you for something else. Like, I think that we all have these beautiful reflective offerings, but the act of having someone hold you in unconditional love, provide you safety, and provide you an honest reflection is powerful for this work.
Yeah, I agree. So can you tell us how you work with people and how people can work with you?
Yeah, so my coaching offerings right now are one-on-one coaching sessions because all the work that I offer has been the work that most radically changed me. And so it's what I can embody as true for myself. So I offer 1 month, 3 month, and 1 year containers for people who are really feeling a deep dive and want to be held in that work.
Dude, I love that because a year, you know, I'm very into astrology and other things, and I think we go through so many cycles in a year that are meant to be catalysts to help us on our journey and like change us and shape us. And so the year container, like I love that. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and I actually didn't initially launch it. So I launched and I had 1 in 3 months. And then at the end of my first year, I reached out to my clients and was like, how would you feel about a year offering? Because for me on the journey, I felt like, you know, there have been times where I've needed just like a month of a deep dive or 3 months. But when I was kind of in those taking off points, I'm like having that accountability, having that drop in at a consistent long-term level has been really, really supportive to me. And I'm like, I think there's something about this work that just committing to like, I am going to show up for 1 year.
Yeah.
You're going to change.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I'm sure a lot of information can be exchanged in a month, but like people, you are not going to get there in a month. Like, hate to tell you, you know, we're in a society where we're like, okay, yeah, I want to change, but I wanted, you know, I need to do it by next month.
Yeah.
Like, no, like this is a commitment. And it really is, not to scare people, but it is a forever commitment. But like once you are a few months on that committed path of self-growth, then it's like, yeah, of course I'm going to continue working on this for the rest of my life, because like what could be more important?
Yeah, I used to hate when people would say like, "Oh, it's a lifetime journey," because I would be like, "I want a stopping point." Like, now what I say is, from my experience, it gets really fun.
Yes. It evolves into something very different than it starts out as, for sure.
Yes. Where it's like, I get to do this work. I get to tune into my body and tune up my nervous system every single day.
Yeah.
I get to, you know, expand my energetic field every single day. I get to navigate narratives. And yeah, it's the most rewarding and fun thing that I get to do in my life. And I can feel when I am not in my work, because I get so stuck and stagnant where it's like, why would I ever want to go back to that
not do
place?
right. Yeah.
Like, it's the best work that I've ever done. So that's really the beauty of the year, is you have a really well-developed support system through a full year of grounding in this work. And this work that I do with people is somatic reset. We are priming the body to rehab from any burnout, be ready to release and ready to expand. We do narrative work where it's getting really honest and really, really tuned into what are the scripts that are playing,
Yes,
how
so
do we start
important.
to change them? And then we get to play with, and where's the expansion in all of this?
Yes.
Where is the
Yes.
bold next step? Where is the next version of you? How can we hold this version as your intentionality for 1 month, 3 months, 1 year, and connect to this part of you every single day?
Yes, I love that. It sounds incredible. What tools outside of, coaching and somatic work and plant medicine do you recommend for people to kind of like get to know themselves or to use in that self-discovery process?
Yeah, I really love free writing as an entryway. Or if you're not a writer, like I said, I am a talker. I have like I came into this world talking. Um, and so sometimes I'll just sit with myself and talk about a situation or allow myself, whether it's in a prayer to myself, just
Yeah.
to get it out, but begin to open up a space for you to freely express. And even if it's just, I don't know what to say, I feel uncomfortable, I don't know how to express, write it, say it, release it. You will eventually start to open up a pathway to communicate with yourself. So just
Yeah.
start to find a doorway to tune in.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like making space to do that, whatever it is, whether it is meditating or speaking into your phone and talking to yourself, or, for me it was Kundalini. I had a friend who would do 30-minute Kundalini classes first thing in the morning, and like I was like, if I can show up for those classes, like there's I know information will come that gives
Mhm.
me the next step, right? Because it is, you're silent, you're moving, like it is a moving meditative state. And so like just finding the thing that allows you the space to like listen and get to know yourself.
Absolutely. And I also am in love with Kundalini. I am a practitioner, and
Oh,
it
awesome.
was one of the tools that I found really early on that I was like, I don't know what this is, but this is magic. Um,
Yes,
and
agreed.
I I really worked with Kundalini on allowing myself to even be able to sit and meditate, because a lot of the times, if you're a high energy person or if you have a lot of unprocessed stuff, sitting in meditation to try to connect to yourself isn't really
It's not
going
going
to
to
feel
work.
good,
Yeah.
and it's probably not going to be the most fruitful, so you won't
Yeah.
stay with it long term.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
sitting in pain for 10 minutes every morning, you're probably not going to commit to the practice. But when we move our energy through a practice like Kundalini, which is so brilliant in its design and how it moves energy through the body and through the meridians and through our
Yes.
breath, it is truly just, I am blown away by the mechanics of it
Yes.
all every single time I do it. But we also create more space within the body to, after doing a Kundalini practice, sit and meditate and listen
Yeah.
and tune in. I
Yeah.
actually had a teacher who was like, after every practice, sit and listen for 2 minutes
Mm-hmm.
to see
Mm-hmm.
what comes through.
Oh yeah. The information I've received in during or after Kundalini sessions is like wild. That's how I first started to really connect to. It was a tool for me to really connect to and trust, my guides, my higher self, start to really hone my psychic connection. It was like the first thing that allowed me to kind of clear the energy to create that connection. Um, and I don't think a lot of people know this, that yoga itself, well, we have whatever versions. I go to Yoga Lattes. We have whatever versions of it out there. Yoga itself was originally designed to be a tool to get get the mind out of the way, right? To be a
Yeah.
tool to tune into energy. So even if you're not doing Kundalini or don't have access to it, or if you're just going to your own regular yoga class, like start to shift your thoughts to think of it in that way, as like, this is not a tool for exercise necessarily. This is a tool to get my mind out of the way and like start to tune in a little bit differently.
Yeah, I love that fact about yoga, that it's literally designed as how to work with the mechanics of our body to understand that we are energy.
Yes.
And I actually opened the door for that exploration with Shavasana first and
Yes.
foremost, where
Yes.
I couldn't
Yep.
meditate. And I was a little bit more familiar with Hatha when I was, in my early 20s, and that was by far the only thing you could find. But really using that time, because when I first went, I was like, oh, it's a nap at the end of class.
Oh yeah. When people skip it, I'm like, you are crazy. This is
I
the
know
best part.
it is. And taking that space to just tune in to like, okay, where's my mind? How does my body feel?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that wants to come through? How can I
Yeah.
clear my mind? How can I release my attachments to my thoughts? There are so many opportunities to drop in, and
Yeah.
just allowing yourself to tune into those opportunities and see what comes up.
Yeah. I mean, we're all receiving so much more information than we know. And it's like we almost don't realize the work that we're doing to
Mhm.
ignore it, you know? Um, so once you start to have some silence and start to tune in, like, yes, everyone's like, I want to be more connected to my guides. I want to talk to my higher self. It's like, honey, the information's coming. It's just a matter of you being willing to listen.
Absolutely. I also love the practice of like a silent hour when you wake up. Now, we
Mm-hmm.
might not all have
Mm-hmm.
an hour if you have, kids and other responsibilities, but just instead of always having something stimulating
Yes.
you, creating more space for silence,
Yes.
because that's a big time that things get to come through and we get to kind of see how things are unfolding. But typically, we're always so inundated with our phones, television, other noises coming in. We miss the opportunity for mindfulness in our day-to-day life, which can be a
Yeah.
massive portal to
Yeah.
getting information that we are ready to receive.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder because I think it doesn't have to be this like you're taking time out of your day to do this. Like I felt called the last few months to just like bring more silence in. So when I go for a walk, my morning walk, no podcast, no
Mhm.
phone, like nothing, just walking and the stuff that drops in. Simple things like folding the laundry or doing the dishes where I would normally throw a podcast on, not throwing the podcast on, and like all of a sudden you're in a different world and you're being productive in a way that you could never imagine because you're tuned in and listening. And so I think it doesn't have to be, well, yes, I still set my morning time aside and have my practices. If that feels overwhelming, like just look at your daily activities where you can have less noise.
Yes, I love that. And I have done that as well with my walks where I will not bring music. And I like to try to see how aware of my surroundings I can be.
Yes,
Like
I
really
love that.
tuning into like, okay, if I walk by a storefront, like what moves me about it? Where can
Yes.
I find beauty? And it's been such a nice practice because it's so grounding in the present.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Catherine, you have 10 seconds with someone. This is the only time you're ever going to see them, and you want to say something that is just going to impact their life for the better. What would you say to them?
I love you and I want you
Ah,
to achieve everything that's in your heart.
hmm. I love that. Yeah.
I
Beautiful.
just, yeah.
Beautiful. I'm sure it's incredible to work with you. I think that gave us all a little bit of insight in what it would be like to work with you and how empowered you make other people feel. So thanks for the work that you're doing out in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for this space that you've created to really share the work and share transformation in all of its forms.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find you and connect?
So, best ways are to connect with me are through my Instagram. It's just my name, Katherine Petrullo. And I also have a website where you're able to email me from and look at some of the offerings. Some are not quite up there yet, but send me an email, send me a DM. I love to connect and support people on this journey. And I am happy to help you in whatever way I can.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katherine. Thank you, everyone, for hanging with us. If any of this resonated with you, shoot Katherine a message and tell her how you're feeling and ask her where you should start. She is clearly a wealth of knowledge, and I know we only tapped into a tiny percentage of it. So hit her up, follow her, share this episode with someone that you think might be going through it, or before they might be heading in a direction where they're gonna go through it. Like, let's get them before they fall down that dark hole. Yeah, great conversation, some really great tips and information. Thank you so much, Katherine.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys soon.